I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now about the reading of the mission statement by Angela Bisner, please.
Commission of Foley Public Schools to bring together students, parents, staff, and community to provide a quality education while with an emphasis on developing the full potential of an individual.
Thank you very much. At this time, we do have an open forum for anyone who would like to take this opportunity to speak. Doesn't look like a large crowd there tonight. We'll also have an opportunity at the end, so if anyone more comes in. Anyone? Okay, we're going to move on then. Next, we will be doing the approval of the agenda, but I would like to call if you have any additions, changes, as well as we do have a tabletop item that will need to be added to the agenda, which should just be added into the consent agenda as they are resignation, leave of absence types of items, correct?
We have one retirement and then request for a leave of absence.
Okay. So yeah, so that can just go into the consent agenda, please.
So what I'm going to ask, just because I'm new, and I would like to know if we want something pulled from the consent agenda, is that now or is that the next one?
That would be,
Now?
I believe now, because when we vote, well, we'll do the, it's probably best to do it now for doing things.
I would like to pull from the consent agenda the attorney bill so we could talk about the attorney fees.
So I think that would just be all of the board bills, or can we pull just one from the board bills?
You could pull one, but again, we have paid the bill, and that's been typical that we do pay the bills. You would need a motion. If you have a motion, you need a second.
Is there a second for removing that particular item from the consent agenda?
I'll second.
There is a second to remove the attorney fees from the bill pay item of the consent agenda. We would move that then to right after the consent agenda. And all in favor of this, please say aye. One more time, let's hear the ayes.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion will carry. We will move that out and discuss that. Okay, so
sorry,
we,
Mr. Chair, just so we're clear in our end with what were the votes? We didn't hear.
we Pamela, Alyssa, Sharon, and Wayne for it. And then
And then-
myself against, and
Stephanie.
Stephanie, were you against as well?
Okay, so 14.
All right,
Thank you.
yep, that's fine. In that case, with the agenda so amended, are there any other additions we want to, or changes to the agenda before I would take a motion then to approve? All right, hearing none, let's have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Pamela, need a second?
Second.
Seconded by Stephanie, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. The next thing would be the approval of the routine business items, which is board bills, approval of meeting minutes, etc., and a consent agenda, which does have the tabletop item now added to it. It does not have the bill from our attorney fees. That will be the next item after the consent agenda approval. Any discussion on this?
I wish we could get away from having tabletops.
Yeah, these came in, sadly, in the between time of things being posted and now. And given their nature, I mean, I think we'd rather do it sooner rather than making people wait a month. I mean, it's pretty, we're talking about a retirement and a leave of absence. Those are pretty, I mean, they're important, but, you know, it's not like we're going to have a huge discussion on them. It's not like we're adding a large discussion item. But yeah,
Well, and I think in a perfect world, we would like to have everything prior, but we all know that that's not realistic, that things do come up in between the time that we get the board book. So I think it's perfectly acceptable for some of these things to come up on tabletop. So
Sadly, I think a lot of people doing retirements and leave of absences and things like that usually hold off until like Friday to submit, and well, Friday comes after our agenda, so we just kind of have to roll with it. I mean, they're not working on our time.
Mr. Chair, just as a point of reference too, as you had stated that one of our retirement came in on Thursday evening, and it was important for that person not to wait because they value the district and want to make sure that we have enough time for the replacement, looking at the time frame of the retirement. And again, as you had stated, just with the leave of absence, it's nice to be able to provide a person with that information. And just as a reminder that that was part of the Friday evaluation.
Yeah. So, all right. Is there a motion then to approve our routine business items? There was a motion by Pamela, right, and a second by Stephanie. So all in favor of this, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We are going to move on then to the next item, which is the board bill pulled out of the consent agenda for the payment to the district's attorneys. Let's see if I can actually pull up the thing I want to pull up. Anyway, Ms. Visner, you are the one wanting to pull this out, so I assume you have a comment, question on it.
Yeah,
Sorry, no,
okay. Yeah, I do have questions on it. I have questioned the attorney bills that we've gotten the last couple of months. Clarification hasn't really been something that I've gotten. I will get it to you, I have not gotten that at this point. I think that we have to look at the amount of money that we are spending on attorneys. We could have a part-time attorney in our building at the amount of money that we've spent. And since 2024, about $150,000. At this point, we need to truly look at the reasons we're getting attorneys and how much we're paying for our attorney. Do we need to look at a different attorney? Or what do we need to do? Because we could have a couple more teachers. We could have a couple more staff. We need to really focus on what we're spending money on and getting the board involved in what we're spending that attorney money on. Because that is a lot of money that we've been spending. If you do $250 an hour usually an attorney costs, maybe more, a little bit more, that's over $600. And I get there's difference for different things, and I understand that. But that is a big amount. And I've looked at other districts in our area. Then I've asked them for their information and they have no problem giving it, and we are way above theirs.
Any other comments, questions about this topic?
Well, I think we have to have some oversight someplace about when it happens and what it's for. We've always had an attorney of record, and the thing was, if we had a major project, we would get an estimate for it. And what always happened with the superintendent was usually it was taken care of with the allotted amount of money. I mean, like 99% of the time. If it wasn't, maybe once or twice it wasn't, they'd say we need to do this. It would be explained to us. We think this much money would do, and we basically approved that amount of dollars to go forward with that. And there's a huge discrepancy between the amount we're spending and what we did, let's say, for the last 20 years. There has to be some oversight. It's a lot of money. I mean, it's teachers in a class.
Well, and just to add to that, I will tell you that, well, first of all, thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a fair question. It is a lot of money. But I will be the first to tell you that Dr. Perry walked into a lot of situations that needed to be addressed from a legal standpoint. And I would love nothing more than to sit down and go through all of that and all the things that have actually costed the district based on just different things that have happened over the last couple of years. we've had a lot, and, you know, I started out with Dr. Perry in the beginning, and she was hit with a lot of it. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, Pam, we absolutely need, like, the transparency of exactly how the monies were spent, and I am all for that, absolutely.
So I feel like that should be something that the board should get a copy of. Let's look at it together. Hey, what is being spent? How much are we spending per time that we're paying out $20,000, $30,000? You know, in the last two months, we've spent $50,000. That's pretty close, if not over.
So I'm hearing a couple different issues. I think that really comes down to, there's really no official mechanism for the board in terms of this, right? There's no set number of dollars, and there's no mechanism for the board to provide structured oversight. Does that sound like a fair summation of what I'm hearing?
I feel if we're gonna spend $20,000 a
Well,
month,
I'm
we
just-
should probably have some oversight of that, because that's a huge amount.
So-
I know in different organizations, not schools, but different organizations, if you know that you're gonna be calling an attorney and it's gonna cost, I don't know, you ask before you spend that amount, or if you let them know the situation and say, okay, this is the reason I'm contacting the attorney, and we are going to have to, it's going to cost us some money regarding this issue.
So here's what I would propose. We do have a work session on Wednesday. We could, we're talking about committee work and whatnot as well on Wednesday. Maybe what we're going to want to do is have a legal issues committee, much like we have a financial committee, that could have a regular meeting saying, hey, these are the things, this is the spend. You know, that would be something I'd say we could work out on Wednesday. Dr. Perry, if you wanted to come over and talk about that at that time, would that?
Some of that information is confidential, and as I've stated, I'm happy to sit down and review the bill, but I do not feel comfortable sending our legal bill via email. I just don't. And again, I think it's important that we have to remember what hat we're wearing. Are we wearing our board member hat, or are we wearing our community member hat? Because if it's a community member hat, that's a different avenue that we're requesting that information. And to Stephanie's point, there have been some significant issues that have happened, and as I pointed out, our last bill, I think Erin has that information. We've had some significant student issues, and the point of using an attorney is to safeguard the district from future liabilities. And I think I've explained those future liabilities. Those issues have been explained, but again, we do need to be careful because of data practices and data privacy.
So, much like financial subcommittee, is there, would a, well, I guess my question is, would a legal subcommittee have, would it function, would it work, would it be legal and everything?
I think in terms of the committee structure, that's to the board's discretion.
I just want to make sure there's a committee that can actually get information.
But in the policy, the superintendent, but, you know, having here in your chair, so we haven't had these issues together. But when Stephanie was chair, if there was an issue that we needed to call our attorney about, the chair is informed of that. So they do know what the situation and what is occurring.
All right. So I guess when we're at our work session on Wednesday, we want to talk about committee work with this, but I'd say it's not, you can't think of a reason not to discuss that possibility. That's really one thing. Okay.
And I think the biggest is that everybody gets the information that they are looking for. You know, like the avenue of that, that's like, obviously we can't talk about like that kind of stuff in a public meeting, but like, how can we do that? Because you're absolutely right, like, you want to know the information.
As a board member, I want to know where our tax dollars are going
Oh,
and what money is going away from our students that could be going in our classrooms.
And that's a
And
fair ask.
it's not because of a community member, it's more of, hey, we need to get control over the money.
All right, well, I guess I would recommend, Mr. Wilson, you have a comment or question? Oh, I was just going to say, if we're okay with deferring the topics of the committee and whatnot on this topic to Wednesday, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the item. But Mr. Wilson, go ahead.
Oh, I want to make sure that, to clear your concerns up there, that I totally understand your, wow, that's a lot of money, right? I believe Trish cleared that up for you. And also moving forward, we have to trust our chair and our superintendent.
We also have
We
to
don't trust them.
communicate it.
We don't trust them, they're not going to stay on. We have to trust our principals, our superintendent, let them do their jobs.
As
I just
you-
want us to do both.
Yep, no, and I
Make sure we do
understand,
both.
trust is earned, and also, you have to, when you send an email saying you're going to send something out, and then 2 weeks later, you don't get it yet, that's not earning trust. So that's where I'm at with it, and I know we are all busy, we all have jobs to do, and I get that, but we also need to work on that, working together and saying, hey, come in. And she did say that today at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 2 o'clock, whenever I got the email. I was already on my way to a different event, so I read the email this afternoon while I was walking.
So I think we will address this.
And,
On Wednesday.
yeah, and I think what I'm really hearing is we want some formalized structure.
Yes.
Just like any of the other committees, you have a finance question, you ask the finance committee members who go, there's a chain of communication, and I think what I'm really hearing is we want to make sure we have a chain of communication, we know what it is, and we use it. Is that a fair statement?
And we're giving the information.
And we're giving the information.
Well, in that case, I would like a motion then to pay this particular item, please.
Oh, I think we'll
It's already paid.
No, we knocked it out down to here. It was removed from the consent agenda, not to pay.
Yes.
Well, you know what I mean, approval of the board bill.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Stephanie, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Wayne. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the spirited discussion. I know sometimes it might feel a little, but we're getting places.
Who made the motion?
I did.
Stephanie and second by Wayne. And it's giving us some more direction for how we grow. Thank you. We're now going on to the resolution for accepting gifts. We have a donation this month by Audio Video Extreme, $400 value of items for birthday bundles for the Intermediate School Student Council and birthday bundles for Cross Center. In addition, Dr. Perry has a late-breaking donation. You want to mention it?
Yes, we had a meeting today with SiteLogic, and I apologize, I forgot the bag, Patrick, so I apologize. But SiteLogic, rather than donating, typically around the holiday season, we have a lot of our companies that will bring in cookies and candies for different buildings. Rather than doing that, they have donated 2 winter coats, and then they also donated 2 sets of mittens for us as well, gloves and hats. And so we really appreciate it. 2, yeah.
2.
2.
2 or 200?
2,
Oh,
yeah.
I think you said 200.
It would be wonderful. It's 2. But we really are thankful for that partnership with SiteLogic, and it's a nice way to support the work that we do with our students, and none of us at that time need any more cookies or candy, so it's much appreciated to receive the coats and the hats and mittens.
Now this takes care of it, we don't have to add it at our next meeting.
No, I'll add it to this.
Yes, beautiful quotes. I thought it was just a different
Yeah.
way of doing things that'll be truly appreciated by,
And they're for like elementary age children. We definitely want to go outside and run around at recess and everything. So it was
they were winter
a
quotes.
wonderful winter period. All right, well then I will take a motion to approve the resolution for accepting gifts. Motion by Pamela, second by Sharon. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Excellent. Next, we have an update on the READ Act. Everyone, please welcome Ms. Christy Ron. If you want a microphone, I have one over there for you to use.
Okay.
But I think we're all kind of foregoing that today.
All right, okay. Stand here like I did in the fall. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, great. So thank you, first of all, for having me back. I was here earlier this fall, I gave about the READ Act and the training that the staff has been involved in this year. And so I'm honored to be here and provide this update to you. Just know that some of the content in my presentation will be reviewed for context for those who maybe weren't here at that original presentation. So to review, the Minnesota READ Act is a government-driven and mandated initiative that is designed to support all learners in the path to becoming proficient readers. The goal of this initiative is to have every Minnesota child reading on grade level every year beginning in kindergarten. One requirement, which there are several, but one requirement of the READ Act is offering high-quality professional development training. And that's what my presentation will be primarily focused on tonight. And that training's purpose is to support our teachers in providing evidence-based reading instruction. So this school year, as you might recall, 75 of our teachers are participating in what we consider phase 1 of the training. Those would be 75 teachers across the district that are being trained in course OLA program. You can see the list of educators that are currently participating. We have our staff working in 2 cohorts. Our cohort 1 is our elementary staff with Mr. Cooper. They have their own facilitator. Our second cohort is the FIS and FHS staff and Dr. Perry. And they have their own facilitator. So each cohort has their own facilitator. You know as well that there are 9 learning modules within the OLA program. When I came in the fall, we were around 2-3. And at this point, we're wrapping up 7 and 8. So a majority of our staff have finished module 7, which is that syntax, sentence level, understanding grammatical stuff, and has built into comprehension in both the language and reading realms. And so we'll be wrapping up that and then working through assessment. So with OLA, what we know is that we began our training on September 11th. Wednesday, we kicked it off together in the auditorium with our READ Act t-shirts and top. We went afterwards to work on our modules, which were asynchronous. Our plan is to wrap up the training on Friday, March 21st. And we have been using the early dismissal and the teacher workshop days to do the work. So I had mentioned this previously, but I'd just like to recognize the board again for amending the schedule to accommodate for the work that the teachers have been doing. We've been using that time very wisely and have been producing excellent quality work. So our participants have been using a pacing schedule that was given to them at the beginning of the training, and they are really adhering to the timelines. A majority of our staff, as mentioned, are either finishing at module 7, or working within that right now with a goal to finish module 8 by the end of the month here. Majority of our staff, again, are there. In the month of February, we'll be changing our focus a little bit to be working in our curriculum teams, and then reverting back to the OLA training again in March to wrap it up. But some of our participants may continue working on the OLA training in the background because that will be that asynchronous work. Our OLA participants are working to demonstrate mastery of the learning outcomes through delineated tasks that are assigned to them. And I'll talk about those on the next slide. Oh, sorry. First, let's do a module update. So as mentioned, a majority of our staff are through module 7. We have one staff person who's finishing up module 6. We have a plan to get that wrapped up. But otherwise, things are on track. And module 8 at 60% right now. And actually that's a little bit higher. I think I updated this last Thursday, and this morning updated to 50. So 50 out of the 75 that are complete with module 8. So the course completion criteria, I went over this in the fall, but I'll kind of let you know where we're at in comparison to the criteria. So all of the staff members are required to participate in pre- and post-course surveys. Obviously, the pre-course surveys took place prior to the training. The post-course will take place afterwards. They're required to complete the module assignments, which include the knowledge checks, the reflections, the quick checks, in-practice work, the community chat involvement. And for the community chat pieces, what they're required to do is to consider a prompt, and they have to reflect on that prompt. And then after inputting their reflection, then they have to read the rest of, or other reflection statements that are in there and comment on those. So it's just kind of like one layer deeper into the reflection. And so they have to complete that work for each module. And then another requirement is that they have to complete 3 live sessions. And at this point, we've completed 2 out of the 3, or 2/3 done with that. The state is offering options for staff to make up. So if there was an instance where a staff member couldn't make a live session, they do have some mixed cohort opportunities, but our staff really have clear priority on this and are attending them. We just have one person who is scheduled to do a makeup. Otherwise, everybody else is finished with 2 out of the 3 live sessions. And at the very end, at the completion of all the modules, the participants will go through, and there will be a selection of module assignment pieces where they will go through and analyze their work and then submit them for their portfolio. And so if you recall from the fall, they have to achieve 80% or higher on the knowledge test, and then they have to complete the work, at least 80% of that, and then they have that 80% or higher on the knowledge test, the 80% on the work completion, and then there's also the rubric work where they're scored on the written response items. And so that will be the final component. So I had asked the facilitators to share some insight with me about how the participants are doing. Remember, we have two facilitators, and so we have for each of the cohorts, one for each cohort. And so I had asked them to share, some general information, some observations about their cohort. And so you'll see where it says facilitator comments, and then there's a few bullets, and then facilitator comments. So the top section is about one of the cohorts, the bottom section is about the other cohort. I just wanted to keep the cohorts anonymous, and that's why I didn't label them. And so one of the facilitators said that the grades look great with all the knowledge checks at 100% and up to date. The conversations in the community chat, those are those reflections that I was referring to, are supportive and they show a depth of knowledge and reflection. She said, to be honest, I truly enjoyed their, referring to the participants' initial responses as well as their comments to each other. It seems like they're getting a lot out of the course content, some affirming their current practice and some refining them, and says she's thankful that we are on the same page in the work, which is a really important piece as well. The second facilitator has shared that all teachers are progressing through the modules at the suggested pace, and that 90% of the teachers have scored 100% on the knowledge checks. And remember that the requirement is at 80% or higher on those. All of the teachers are providing knowledgeable, honest, and introspective responses. And based on the responses in live session participation, many teachers are implementing the knowledge from the course and reflecting on their curriculum and teaching practices. So great comments from the facilitators. So in consideration, and I've been doing some observing as well, and I participate in the PLC and data meetings across the district, and so what I can tell you is that the training concepts are being discussed and talked about during meetings. I can hear teachers using structured literacy language. They're talking about the scope and sequence. They're talking about their most foundational skills. They're talking about how to carefully scaffold things. They're considering the different components of reading instruction and what's important. And so they're using structured literacy talk. They're also referring to the source book and assessment book that came with the training regularly and talking with the teachers. You might be looking for a fluency intervention or a phonics intervention or something like that, and we can go back into the source book and pinpoint specific examples of things they can do. And those are very, the source book does a very thorough job in explaining what that intervention would look like and how to carry that into the classroom and why that's important. So, know that. And then the teachers are also using the diagnostic assessment piece, and that is actually in Module 9, but some are digging in already because they're interested in wanting to use it. And it's also a conversation at some of the PLC meetings and data meetings, because that would be a way that we could hone in on what skills a student would know or not know at this point to help with instruction. So beyond the training, so we know that the training is going to wrap up here at the end of March, but we know that we're not done with the learning piece. And so I just wanted to just share a little bit with you about some next steps. So when we wrap up the training, we're going to be working really hard to implement the learning and knowledge into the classroom practices. And some of that work is being done right now. Like I said, the conversations at meetings have been rich, and you're hearing the structured literacy back, but we need time to collaborate. We need time for coaching. We need time for reviewing the content. And so that will take place following the training. And we do have a couple early out dates in April where we are looking at how to structure that time to best support the teachers in learning the content. We're working to look for evidence of structured literacy in our current curriculum. And some of that work, as mentioned, has already been done during the training, but we'll be diving in a little deeper to that. We know that there are new language arts standards at the state level that will need to be examined, identified, and embedded within our curriculum. And those are to be implemented next year. So kind of coinciding with the training, you have the new standards, and so there's some work to be done yet. And then I just wanted to let you know that as the district literacy lead and as a local certified facilitator, that I am participating in monthly meetings with the state and regional leads to help learn about the state mandates that go along with the READ Act and learn how to best support our teachers. And so with the district literacy lead piece, there's a lot of conversation about what needs to go into our local literacy plan, what needs to be done standards-wise, that type of thing. And with the local certified facilitators meetings, those ones are focused on making sure that our practices align with the READ Act. And so those are monthly meetings. Like I said, all of the leads kind of around the state are put into their regional networking groups, and then the state leads the regions lead the districts, and then those regional leads serve as a liaison to get information back and forth between the districts and the state. So it does work both ways, and then if we're observing something of concern, we can report that to the regional leads. If we have questions about what we're doing or how we're interpreting the READ Act law to be, we can send something to them and have them analyze it, give us feedback, and they have been very, very good to work with. So I just wanted to let you know that those meetings are happening in the background, and that they serve a very important role in this practice as well. So that's essentially what I have for an update. We just wanted to allow you to ask questions if you have questions. I can provide clarification if there's something that wasn't clear. I know some of you are here for the district advisory council, so. All right, well, if there's nothing further, thank you so much. And everybody come back and Jerry.
All right. Our next item will be the audit presentation, which is discussion and an action. So come on down. And your name is for the crowd.
Janelle Bitson.
Janelle Bitson, everybody. Come on over.
You have the books, these are just the slides that I'm going to go through tonight. If you want a copy of them, you don't have to go. Do you have a preference on which slide you want?
Just go ahead and go on up wherever you like. If you want the microphone, it's there. If not, whatever you're comfortable with.
Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you all tonight. Certainly feel free to interject at any time if you have questions. I do have the summary for you of your 2024 audit. So first I will cover the reports that we issue as part of the audit process, and then we'll go through some of the charts and graphs that show the trend information. So the first report is the independent auditor's report. We did again issue an unmodified opinion this year. This is what's considered a clean opinion, or the best that we can offer you. It states that your financial statements present fairly in all material respects. And then we have 3 other reports that we issue as part of the audit process. The next one being a report on government auditing standards. These standards require us to look at internal controls over financial reporting, as well as compliance with various laws, regulations, contracts, and grants. When it comes to internal controls, we had one item to report, and that's the lack of segregation of accounting duties. You have seen this in the past, just due to the limited staff that we have within the business office. There are some duties that are overlapping. So as I mentioned, you've seen this in the past, very common with entities of your size to be getting this finding.
This is our typical finding, I think I've heard it now 5 years in a row.
Yeah, and we give it honestly probably to 99% of the government entities we work with, because there's just not, when you think about cost benefit of adding additional people, sometimes it doesn't make sense. The district has done a nice job about implementing compensating controls to help limit or reduce risks of things happening, but there is still that possibility. So as the board, we just recommend that you remain aware of the situation. When it comes to compliance, we have no instances of non-compliance to report. The next report is our report on uniform guidance. This relates to the federal funding that you receive. This year we did test the child nutrition program, so we're looking at compliance with the requirements of this program, as well as controls relating to that. And we did issue an unmodified opinion on the compliance with this program. So all the records seem to be in order relating to that. And then the last report is our report on Minnesota legal compliance. The state auditor's office gives us a list of state statutes to test compliance with each year. This year we did have one finding relating to bid procedures. There's specific procedures that kind of lay out the plan for public notice and certain verbiage that needs to be in the contracts and such. And we can't say that it didn't happen, but we can't find the documentation that it did happen. So with some of the turnover that happened within the district as well, some of the documents couldn't be found. So it may not have happened, it may have happened, and the documentation is just filed somewhere else. So just be aware of that and kind of implement processes to make sure that that happens and that those records are maintained. And then following that, we've got some charts and graphs that show some trend information. We've got a few tables and graphs that show student counts. Because such a large percent of your general fund revenues are based on student accounts, we like to include those in here as well. So the first table here is your resident ADM numbers for the last 5 years. For 2024, you did see a decrease of about 23.21. You're down about 43.77, or 2.6% since 2020, the first year presented here. And then the graph on the following page is that same information. And then the next slide converts those ABM numbers to pupil unit numbers, and that's what your aides are paid based on. So the top part of the page has the weighting factors. So you can see that those secondary students are weighted a little bit heavier than the other students. They're getting a little bit more aid. It's said to cost a little bit more to educate those students. So with those weighting factors, the bottom part of the table converts to those pupil unit numbers. You did see an overall decrease in 2024, with a decrease in the resident pupil unit numbers, an increase in the residents leaving the district. You also had a One thing you can also see on this table is that the non-residents coming in, that number is higher than the residents leaving the district. So that's the indicator that you do have a net gain on the open enrollment program, being you've got more students coming than leaving the district. And then the next graph is again those same numbers. So the blue part of the bar is those non-resident pupil units. In total, you're down about 4% from 2020. Following that, we've got a table that shows the general education formula allowance, kind of where that number has been for the last 10 years, where it is in the current year. For 2024, you did have a slightly larger than normal increase. You got the 4%. Kind of the standard has been 2 historically. So that just kind of shows that trend. And then the following table shows the general fund sources of revenue. For 2024, your total revenues were up about $938,000. The largest component of that was in the state sources of revenue. Again, the general education aid piece being the largest component of that with the increase in the formula allowance. You did also see some increases in the LTFM aids and special education aids based on your student needs. And then partially offsetting that increase, you did see a decrease in the other source line item. That's your local dollars as well as the federal dollars. The federal component was the largest part of that decrease, just as you had used up the federal COVID grants previously. And those were one-time funds, and that once you use them up, you don't have them to spend it. And then the next graph shows those same revenue numbers, the components of the general fund revenues. That blue portion of the bar is the state sources of revenue. That makes up about 86% of your general fund revenue. So again, really shows the reliance that the district has on those state revenues. Following that, we've got a table that shows general fund budget and actual results. The first 2 columns of numbers are the original and final amended budget that you as the board approved, kind of a directive to management for where you anticipated the general fund balance should come out. So you were budgeted for a decrease in fund balance of about $537,000. The actual was a decrease of about $825,000. So about $288,000 more of a decrease than what you had anticipated. A couple variances going into that. Your revenues were about $205,000 under budget. The bulk of that variance was in the federal revenue line items. You had budgeted to use some federal allotments and you did not use them this year. So some of those dollars will carry over for future spending. And then on the expenditure side, you were about $134,000 over budget. Some of the larger variances within that, instructional support was over budget on salaries and benefits, and then pupil support was under budget. Some capital items were budgeted for, and those purchases were not made during the year. So again, about an $825,000 decrease in fund balance. The pie charts on the next page show the general fund expenditures, the allocation by program. So if you look at the 2024 numbers compared to 2023, overall they are very consistent. It shows consistency in where you are spending your dollars between the various programs. One other thing that we like to point out is the instructional categories, the regular instruction, vocational, and special education. That makes up about 65% of your total expenditures within the general fund. And I can say that of all the schools that I work with, that is one of the higher percentages. So those are, again, dollars going directly to your students within the classrooms. And obviously there's dollars in the other programs as well, but those are harder to split out. But these programs are most specifically directly related to the students themselves. The next table shows revenues per ADM served. For 2024, you did see an increase in these numbers with an overall increase in the revenues. And then 2023 and prior, we do also show averages for similar sized districts and the statewide average. And historically, you've been below those averages in most every fund except the food service fund. And the next graph actually kind of adds all those together and more clearly see how you are below those state averages. And then following that, we've got a similar table, but for the expenditures per ADM served. So again, this number for 2024 did increase with an overall increase in your expenditures. And then historically, you've been below the state average here as well. And you can see that on the graph on the next page. 2020, you were above those averages. That was the year that your district did a bond refunding. You had a bond refunding, it was almost $14 million. So that number does get lumped into the expenditures for that year. But if not for that, you've consistently been below the state average. And that largely is a factor of because you're bringing in less revenues per ADM, you have less dollars per ADM to spend. And then we've got a table that summarizes general fund operations for the last 5 years. For 2024, as I mentioned, revenues had increased about $938,000. Expenditures increased about $1.6 million. Much of that was attributed to increases in salaries and benefits, transportation costs, utilities, and repairs and maintenance. You did have some other financing sources and uses of about $56,000. So again, an overall decrease in fund balance of $825,000. And then the bottom part of that table breaks out the different components of your fund balance. So you do have a large amount, about $1.2 million, that is restricted fund balance. This relates to the state mandated restrictions, so those are specific dollars, or dollars that are set aside for those specific purposes. So there might be some operating capital or LTFM dollars, those various programs that you can only use those dollars for those purposes. So your unassigned fund balance at the end of the year was just under $2.7 million. And that makes up about 10% of your 2024 expenditures. You do have a district policy that says your unassigned fund balance should be at about 12%, so slightly below where that district policy says you should be at. So then this table or graph is the unrestricted fund balances as a percentage of expenditures. So the unrestricted is the unassigned, the assigned, and the non-spendable. So we have this graph in here because this is how we can get a statewide comparison if you're interested in a statewide average. So when it comes to that, that unrestricted portion is about 14.5%. And historically, you've been below that statewide average for that. And then following that, we've got a table for the food service fund. You did see an increase in both revenues and expenditures for 2024. This was the first year that the state provided free meals to all students. So you saw an overall increase in the number of meals served. So an increase in the revenues with the state reimbursement and an increase in costs just with additional meals being served. Revenues did exceed expenditures by about $167,000, so you did have an overall increase in the fund balance for this fund. And then the last table is the community service fund. You had an increase in revenues of about 2.7%, expenditures increased about 3.5%. Expenditures did exceed revenues in this fund by about $82,000. We did transfer about $25,000 from the general fund to cover part of that deficit. But overall, a decrease in the fund balance in this fund of about $57,000. And then at the bottom portion of that table, we do break out the different programs within this fund. So the ECFE and the school readiness programs do have a deficit fund balance at the end of the year. So that is something that we would recommend you kind of monitor and watch, make sure that your fees are set where you want them to be covering the cost within those programs. And then if there's any shortfalls, determine how those deficits will be covered. That's a summary of our 2024 audit. Again, certainly open to any questions if any of you have any.
Any questions? Comments? I guess not.
Well, I'll say the fund balance at 10% is concerning. I mean, that has nothing to do, your presentation was wonderful. But I think that's really concerning, especially when I don't remember any discussion about spending down the fund balance, like in our finance committee. Don't remember hearing anything regarding that.
Well,
When we cut I think we talked about 1.2 starting, I think it ended up about maybe 880,000. And then we could put some things in after those initial cuts, but we have a policy, the fund balance has to increase.
I mean, my understanding was, we said, well, we can deficit spend, we assigned a number for our cutting. I was in the finance committee last year, so, and that's, so I guess my recollection was different from yours, where we said if we do this, we still have to deficit spend it out of our fund balance, so.
But beyond what our policy said, I don't remember any discussion.
Like I said, I recall it, but Aaron.
We did end up cutting a little over $900,000. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but those cuts were made for this year. So we didn't have that extra revenue to come in, and we did talk about how we were going to have to deficit spend. It was going to draw down our fund balance a little bit, but we're hoping with the cuts that we can rebuild our fund balance again this year.
That's how I recall it too. I think the thing to really take away from this is our district cannot spend even the average amount across the state of Minnesota because we just don't have the funding. And when we're talking about strategic plans and whatnot, we're kind of dancing on the idea that there can be an additional referendum, voter approved, and even a small one to get us up to average would do so much for our community. And that's not going to happen fall or anything like that. That's the future, but I think this highlights that it's really not a matter of if, but it's when. And my belief is because our school is a source of pride for the community, that when it comes to that, they're going to say, yeah, we want to be where we're supposed to be for our kids, and they'll do what they have to do for that. But I think we'll be watching this and be like, there it is. We can look at the data very easily.
We just want to thank you again for the opportunity to work with the district and for your staff in the business office. They spend a lot of time preparing for us, so we appreciate all the work that they put into the audit as well.
Unless there's anything else, then I would take a motion to accept the audit. Motion by Pamela, a second by Sharon. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Our next is a resolution relating to our general obligation facilities maintenance bond. There's a lot more words than that, but basically, last time previously at school board, we approved our bond, going forward on this and whatnot. Now we're basically approving the bond sales. Am I saying this, I'm saying this correctly, just kind of a simple version of it. So I just want to make it clear what would happen if this motion failed tonight. Because we talked about making sure everyone kind of knows the same thing. So all the stuff that we're doing for the IAQ project, we've already signed the contracts, we've already agreed to do it. What this bond does is basically authorizes how we're going to pay for it. So if this motion should fail tonight, we have to pay for it out of our own pocket, from our budget that we currently have. So Ms. Nosko is kind enough to run some numbers for me about what that would actually mean for us. So SiteLogic, as part of the thing we've already agreed to pay, that'd be a little over $1 million we're going to pay them. We are going to pay them. We've already put in purchase orders for equipment. That is nearly $1.9 million that we have to pay. Then we have a ratings fee for the S&P that we have to pay. Like, there's no options on any of these things. We've agreed to pay it, we've signed contracts. And that's $23,500. All in all, what we agreed to pay, with or without the bond tonight passing, is nearly $3 million, which is a significant chunk of money. So that is what we're voting on, is using the bond. We agreed to sell the bond now to pay this money for this project. That is what we are, because I know that's like a lot of resolution, blah, 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 it looks whatever, so I want to make it very clear on what it is we are doing with this action. Are there any questions about that?
Mr. Chair, I think Shelby is here to present from
Awesome!
others.
Shelby, come on over.
Walk through the sale day report that you received today. The bond sale was at 10 a.m. this morning, and like you said, this all goes back quite a ways to the July meeting when you had to submit your LTFM plan, which incorporated the project for the IAQ. And then that went into the summer levy setting process, and then you approved that levy in September, and that had the first bond payment in it. And then you also approved then the final levy in December. And just in terms of timing, because you have a healthy fund balance and we're able to make those initial payments out of your fund balance and being reimbursed later from the bond, it's advantageous to push off the bond to the extent possible because you're lowering when the interest payment starts. So I think there's a modest savings to taxpayers there in terms of when you can start the clock on that borrowing of the debt for this. But all of that was previously approved. So the motion on the table tonight is to award to the lowest true bidder, or the lowest bidder, and that lowest bidder was at 3.7% to BOK Financial out of Milwaukee. 7 bids came in this morning, and the bid of 3.7 was below pre-sale and where we had set the initial estimates in July. So a nice
Can you
presentation.
tell people what that initial estimate was?
That was, we used 5% then, and we used 4.09. And you'll see kind of when I get into the numbers where that really effectuates the change for how the sale played out. So the sale results are summarized there, and you will, as part of being in the credit enhancement program, have a paying agent, and then should interest rates decrease, after approximately 8 years, you'll be able to refinance for savings. It's different from a mortgage, right, where you refinance and maybe start the clock over again. When you refinance a bond, you generally just stay at the term that you were at and refinance for savings, which then has to go to the back to the taxpayers. So the bid tabulation is on pages 1 and 2 of the sale day attachments. And then you'll see BOK out of Milwaukee, some national interest in your bonds today. Cleveland, another one out of Milwaukee. New York, a couple of underwriters there, Hilltop out of Dallas, and Fidelity out of Boston. So national attention on your bonds today, and part of that was the bond rating was affirmed at the A+, which was, I know the auditor gave credit a lot to administration of the business office, and again, I would say that that was really advantageous to have that as part of the rating call. It's about an hour-long call where they're really trying to dig in to the specifics of your district and get that third-party analysis of your district so that when underwriters go to look at who they're going to buy the bonds from, or who they're investing in, they really get a good perspective, and that's what S&P provides, and affirm your A+ rating. So a nice rating overall for the district. So the bond amount is 3.8, but because of the market conditions and how we sort of got that lower interest rate, you got a big premium. So that means they paid you more than the face value of the bonds because they wanted to win. So they needed to give you more than the face value. So about $1 million of premium, and that deposit to the construction fund is $14 million. So you will be able to finance fully or pay for fully your project, and we're not going to, and manage throughout, because though a lot of it is done ahead of time, you will be able to manage through any of those uncertainties as the project completes itself. So then the results of bond sale on the debt plan is shown there, which is pretty much how we presented it in the first year for the levy, and then had some of that interest savings throughout the 17 levies then. So the levy in 2025 was set, and $95,000 of principal was able to be added. So really kind of paying that off, starting to pay that off right away. And there is the visual of that on the next page. And then I'll just point to a couple of things that we like to kind of point to, especially when these things happen in conjunction with an audit. So I think it's really helpful to summarize or read through the summary of what S&P sees of your district. And I would just point out too that while your fund balance policy, and I'm looking at the top of page, still the attachments, page 8, the fund balance policy of 12%, where they estimate it, and they're pulling back in some of the reserves because they're general education expenses, they see that at 12.9% of revenue. So and they try to kind of normalize this across the entire nation. So they see that as 12.9% of your staying above your policy. And then they did point exactly to what Erin had said, that the cuts that you plan to be making this year and then being balanced again in FY26. So really kind of incorporating all of those factors to be able to really affirm your rating at the A+. I think it's just a helpful overview of the district and how bond investors would look to Foley, because they're not all coming to visit, but they need to sit at their underwriting desks and make sure they're getting a good investment, and they are. So I think it was overall a good day, and you should be able to proceed with confidence in your project. And this again, the action today is to award to the lowest bidder. So a good deal for the district.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Hearing no questions, comments, or anything else?
It is a roll.
Yes, sir?
It's a roll call vote.
Okay, this will be a roll call vote. So I'll take a motion and a second to approve this resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve the sale bond.
Motion by Wayne Wilson to approve the sale of bond. Do I have a second? Second by Stephanie. This will be a roll call vote, so I'll just go down the line. Cam? Yes or no? Yes. Alyssa? Sharon?
Yes.
Wayne's a yes. Jaime, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Everyone is a yes. Thank you. The motion passes. Thank you very much, everybody. The next one is a kind of a boilerplate. I feel like we just do this every year. It's a resolution that we'll need to pass, directing the administration to make recommendations for reductions in programs, positions, and reasons thereof. This has happened every year, not just when we started doing cuts. This is something that went before that, because it's the time of year to be looking at those things. So this is a pretty standard boilerplate thing. Are there any questions about this? All right, hearing none, I would take a motion to approve this resolution directing our administration to make recommendations for reductions.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Stephanie, second by Wayne. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I think this is a roll call. since
Is this also a roll call? Okay. Hey, 2 in a row. All right, we'll go again. Pam, yes or no? Yes? Alyssa's a yes. Sharon? Yes. Wayne? I'm a yes. Stephanie's a yes. Excellent. All right. We now have our policies requiring review. This is our first public comment. This is discussion only, no action. We have policy 534, our school meals policy. Policy 799, post-issuance compliance policy. And that is all. I know that policy was supposed to meet the other day. I missed it because I was just doing terrible in meeting places on time.
The policy committee did meet, and we discussed school meals policy. There was a question that arose from the policy committee regarding school meals policy. The reason why we're updating it is due to the audit, and the audit made a suggestion. So we'll follow up since it's only the first reading. Policy 799, the post-issuance compliance policy. I'll have Karen speak to that policy.
The post-issuance compliance policy is basically everything we're already doing. It's just in policy form. It's just making sure that we're complying with federal tax requirements and things like that. We just put it into a policy.
Okay. All right, any other questions or comments on these two policies? In that case, we will move on to the next round, which is policies requiring review. Second reading for comment. And this time it is policy 102, equal education opportunity. Policy 103, complaints for students, employees, parents, and other persons. Policy 104, school district mission statement. Policy 530, immunization requirements. Policy 619, staff development for standards. And policy 704, development and maintenance of an inventory of fixed assets and a fixed asset accounting system. Actually, this was also covered at policy the other day.
No, this was covered in policy.
A couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago.
weeks
Yeah.
ago.
So there was nothing else brought up about it? Okay. Any other comments or questions about any of these tonight? Great, we're going to move on to our budget enrollment report. Ms. Noska, take it away.
Enrollment is still it's still steady to me. Looks like in the secondary level is where it looks almost like every grade level minus the 12th grade lost a student. But overall still steady and no concern to me at all at this point in time. And then the budget update, there is not a whole lot to update you on. It looks like we are still, actually, we're right in line with where we were last year. There was no major concerns about any of extra spending or anything like that, other than it looks like there's a little bit more expenditures this year in special education. We did buy some special ed vans. It's just the cost of special ed is going up. But other than that, everything is pretty reasonable, pretty consistent with years past.
Any comments or questions from Ms. Noska on the report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to administrator information and reports. We'll start over there. If anything to add, Mr. Kluger?
Just that today all the school district teachers had PD day. This morning it was spent listening to a speaker on using AI in education. It was interesting and well received. Mr. Bierman set that up for the district, so thank you to him and for doing that. And, it was a good and interesting morning.
Okay. Excellent. Mr. Bierman?
I'll echo that sentiment. We had a great morning of professional development. Will Cooley was here, who's a leader in AI, so it's really good for us, for our staff, to hear about best practices in education and be able to deliver those best practices to our students. So I think it's going to be a great tool for our teachers. I think they're going to be able to convey it to our students. So all in all, it's going to be, I think, a time very well spent. So.
Awesome. Now, I know you're not Eric Inglis, so do you want to, for anyone that doesn't know you, introduce yourself?
I'm Karen Deanna, I'm the Dean of Students at Foley High School.
All right, do you have anything to, excellent. I thought maybe you were just thought you had something to share.
I moved it.
That's so scary. Ms. Noska, anything to add? Okay, Dr. Perry.
I just have a few things, just a quick update about SiteLogic. We've been busy meeting with them, spending quite a bit of time. We reviewed our construction documents, and I believe we're in a good place. We do have just a couple questions regarding lighting. It's a simple question, but it's lighting, so that's where we're waiting to get some more additional information back. I will tell you that looking at the project, we have buildings and grounds this week. One ceiling in the building will remain untouched, and that is in the media center in the high school, but everything else will be redone for ceilings. And looking at just some important dates to keep in mind, February 13th, that's our pre-bid walkthrough. And I believe that's at 2:30, so we'll meet in the high school media center. And at this point, we have sent out invitations for contractors. SiteLogic has worked with a number of them. And then we also had an internalist that Darwin Fleck had reviewed. And so if there was anyone local that we didn't have on the list, to make sure that they were included. And then we'll do a pre-bid walkthrough as well. So just looking at the different areas and the components of the project. And there's 5 different packages that we're going to be bidding. And the second really important date that will be happening, it seems like it's far away, but it's not, March 11th is when we open our bids, and that's at 3 o'clock. No, I'm sorry, I believe that's at 2 o'clock. And what we'll look at doing, because of how, once the bids are opened, we'll be calling out the numbers. There's a system like SiteLogic that they do use. And it'll take about a week or so just to vet out the bids. And each bid is gone through to make sure that the person that is bidding the contract understands what is part of the project to make sure that we have a legitimate bid. And the way that this falls, SiteLogic will make recommendations, but the board does have the final say regarding who is the awardee of the bid. And so it looks like we will have to schedule a special board meeting. So tentatively, we're looking at March 19th as a special board meeting. So we'll email these dates to you as well, but just to have that marked ahead of time.
Check your calendars, and if that date won't work for you, I want to make sure we have a quorum and all that. So if you need an alternative date, let me know as soon as possible. If I get a bunch of people, we'll move it as close to that as we can.
Right, and so we'd like to keep it in that time frame simply because if we're not awarding those bids of work, it just gets delayed. So we just want to make sure that we're on track. One other really important date is that contractors will be on site on June 2nd. So if you recall, just on the district calendar, we do have graduation on June 1st. So it will be a very quick turnover. Internally, we know that there's going to be some adjustments because we won't be able to use the high school at all. And it's going to be field trips too. So once we have a greater plan, we will definitely be communicating that. Again, we're just in those initial stages of how this is all going to work. So we're in the process of just our next meeting with SiteLogic, bringing some extra directors so that we can start to talk a little bit more about how that's going to impact some programming over the summertime. The second thing I want just to update, I want to echo Mrs. Rom when she was here, Christy, and
and really thank her for her work that she has done with the LEAP Act, and also to highlight what the board, the commitment that you have made, also to secure that position. We do use our literacy aid funds to pay for the position, and we are really ahead, I think, of other districts because we wouldn't have to have a literacy lead in place until 2026. And for that part, that's phase one. And so she's really been there to guide in the beginning, and she'll continue with the good work. And I think the reason why you see the success up on the board, on the screen, is because of the work that she does and that she continues to do on a daily basis. One hot item that seems that people want to know about is our calendar for next year. We did have our first calendar committee meeting, and I believe that we'll be able to bring the calendar forward for the February board meeting. There was just a couple things that we had to work out. We have a few changes, but not anything that is earth-shattering. So we did look at just a one-year calendar. And then the final thing the final person I'd like to acknowledge is Darwin Fleck, because that is the retirement that you heard tonight. And I will tell you that from Mr. Fleck, and I know whether it was a tabletop or not, that took some time. And you could see, and hopefully you saw that in his writing, that he has really truly enjoyed his time at Foley Public Schools. And it's 48 years, and when he gave me his letter, he said, I think it's more. And he sat down on Thursday, it was probably around 4 o'clock or so, 4:15, and he started working at Foley Public Schools when he was actually 15 years old. And he took a little bit of a break to go to Voc Tech School. He worked at the Ford Garage, but there was a position here, and he came back to work at the school. And he thinks he's been the director of building and grounds since the 90s, but he really wasn't quite sure. From a personal point of view, I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Darwin Fleck. He is a very special man. And I told him in our meeting that we can replace the position, but we cannot replace the person. And so there are some really big shoes to fill with Darwin, and we are really going to miss him when he retires. So again, just a thoughtful thank you to Darwin for his over 40 years of employment and dedication to Foley Public Schools.
Now we'll go to meeting events and notices. This is not a complete list because nothing on it is our regular board meeting on the 10th of February at 5:30 p.m. right here. All right, now we have, once again, open forum for reports. Let's see, we've had DAX meet. Who else is in that? Policy, which we've kind of heard about. And superintendent committee for the search. So I'll talk about DAX unless either of you would like to. But we basically heard the bulk of it tonight, which was wrong. The other thing that came through was high school making a few adjustments to, like, they have a threshold for their, basically you can do it again for making standards. They've changed that threshold to make sure the kids are actually, not just, I can do it and still get this grade, and, are actually learning and using it appropriately, which and then they also, they had an A+ in their system that didn't mean anything in terms of grade point average or anything like that. It was kind of more of a feather and cap for students, and so they'll be removing that from Infinite Campus. In the policy, the DAC committee approved both of those things for them.
We did have one other committee meeting, and that was Stephanie Stearns. And thank you to Stephanie for being present at the meeting. It was the organizational meeting. And we also have an upcoming facility workshop after following our next board meeting. So we should be able to provide the board with some additional information after that meeting regarding facilities for Stearns.
Anyone else from policy want to make any comments on anything from that meeting?
Superintendent.
Yep, that's our last one. So you want to talk about the update here? Okay, go for it.
We have 4 potential candidates moving forward. We also talked about reaching out to the staff this week and setting up a time. Patrick and I are going to work on the evening staff. Me and Sharon are going to go to the day in the morning. Hopefully we're going to get that set up with you too, Kelly, to send out an email to all staff that they can meet in the auditorium on either Thursday or Friday. We'll let you know just today.
So you'll give me the.
Yeah. Is that going to work?
Mr. Chair, I would recommend talking to the building principals because I don't know what is happening in their buildings on those specific days
Yeah.
in the
Yep.
morning, so.
That's the next step is kind of
So
figuring that
channel
out.
those extra staff news to the building.
Yes. Yep.
And so we will meet with the staff, all staff, not just our teachers, but all staff that are able to come. If they're not able to come, hopefully they have a friend that can give them the information, or they can come to the evening. That's why we had it at 2 different times.
We basically want to make the committee accessible to
To
people.
two people, and also to be able to let them know what the process is for our superintendent search. And know that they are invited to come to the interview process, and that there is a survey that's going to be coming out because we wanted to make sure that they're included in this process of hiring the next leader.
All right.
Mr. Chair, just one other meeting that's happening. Some of you saw Officer Kobe come in, and we just weren't sure what was happening, but he did come in to invite the board and other members community members that are here. We do have an online safety presentation for staff and students, and that's happening in the auditorium. So if you have some time, we have that, and we also have the double header tonight for basketball. So it's a busy night in the building.
Fantastic. All right, now we'll have the opportunity for the board member comments. We'll start on this side. Ms. Visner, please, you have any comments tonight?
I want to thank Alyssa Stewart, Eric Inglis for the weekend activities. This weekend was crazy busy at the school. There was archery at the field house, there was wrestling, little kid wrestling in the gym, and there was the one-act play, and there was the parking lot was packed. Both elementary, intermediate, high school, field house parking lot, they were parked all the way down. So everything went really smooth. I was there volunteering for wrestling, and it was, people were coming in and out of the doors all day long, looking for people. So congrats to the one that played for their hard work. Ninth graders who went to state, congratulations to the ones that are moving forward to the state tournament next Saturday. And then thanks for Christy for being the lead of the READ Act. And Darwin, I'll see him at Rennie's in the morning for coffee. He's a coffee club guy, so.
I just want to congratulate all of our archers over the weekend. They did a fantastic job. I also would like to express the congratulations to the surrounding districts who also have archers. These kids work really hard, and they do really well. It was amazing to see a lot of the different districts come together and cheer each other on from different schools, and every year I'm amazed by all of that. And the wrestlers, every time I roam the hallways, when I was volunteering my time for archery, I saw excited faces, happy, high fives, excitement to be there, so that was really cool to see as well. And then our one-act play, sounds like they did amazing, so I'm really proud of them as well.
Thank you. Sharon?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Carlene DeNavy and Christy Rahm for how she has been presenting the READ Act. And thanks to all who came tonight and those who are checking out our video. I want to thank Darwin for his decades of work for our students, staff, and community. He's a GOAT, the greatest of all time. We've lost 2 of those this year, or we are going to. Darwin and Cheryl. Darwin is our MacGyver, that person that seems to make the impossible possible. We haven't for a while yet, but I wanted to know that his and his family are wished everything positive, especially good health and happiness as a district, we are in debt to him. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson?
I have no comment, thank you.
I'll go to Stephanie, no? Yes, thank you to Darwin, congratulations on retirement. We're gonna call it 50 years, because it's there. We'll just assume it's at least 50 years of service, and it really was service. There are things that he's done for this district I don't think anyone would not consider amazing. So, and you know, I knew him when I was a student, you know, he's that guy in the hall, whatever, I'm a dumb high school kid. Then a few years ago, when I first joined the board, we had a meeting where it was like there's some students, there was some faculty, there was some board members, we're all kind of getting together and we're talking about, you know, various things the district could do, you know, potentially the COVID funds to help people, because we were worried about learning loss. And Darwin was one of the people that came, and you know, you wouldn't think, you know, you just think of schoolkeeper, right, his buildings, facility and whatnot. But he was there to talk about what we could do for students. And it just kind of like, that, it's such a holistic view of everything and really epitomizes how he put students first in everything, right? So he had an opportunity to help brainstorm and he was there, and it was very eye-opening. You know, here's someone with deep institutional knowledge, but from like a whole different side. You know, you think he's like going to be talking about facilities and whatnot. No, he's talking about like support programs and this and that. What about, you know, all these different things? And because he's got just this wonderful view of the students that, you know, no one else is going to have. And he doesn't just see the school, he sees the students, he sees the staff, he sees everybody in just a wonderful way. So I want to say thank you to him from the bottom of my heart. And then I would like to, a little story, and I guess I'm taking Ken's spot with the little stories. But the other night, my niece, who's a few years younger than me, she texts me. She says, "Hey, do you know Mike Byer?" Well, he's one of my daughter's teachers, my God. I said, "Of course I do." And she says, "Well, you know, he's a ball coach and teacher up in Foley. He does, you know, again, he's one of my daughter's favorite teachers." And she says, "He just won the Play Ball Minnesota Terry Ryan Award." Now, this is a very prestigious award, so I want to congratulate Mike Byer on that. It's at a big event called Diamond Awards. I'm actually reading through a text right now. And, you know, like to give you an idea of like who else was honored that night, Ron Gardenhire was honored at that event, right? So this is a big deal for Mr. Byer, and so I want to express gratitude to him as well as congratulations for what he has given our students. All right. If there's nothing else, I think we'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Sharon. Second by Wayne. On favor? Yes? All right. Motion passes. We are adjourned.